Short-term rentals have become extremely popular in the last couple of years. How do you set one up, and what are some of the things to think about? Let's go through them in this video. I'm Michael Luzers. I'm a realtor in the Greater Toronto area, and in this video, I'm going to show you guys how to set up an Airbnb or short-term rental. Now, I've personally set up multiple properties through these websites since 2014. I know all the ins and outs on how to do it successfully. I've also learned a lot of the things of what not to do. In this video, we're going to cover each and every one of those things. Now, before we get started, if you can throw a comment down below on where you're watching from and if Airbnbs are even allowed in your city. I know in Toronto, we do have certain rules and we will go through them. And let's start a community where people can come here, get the information they need to set one up, and also know if their city is a great option. You can also book in a call with me in the calendar link down below. And if you wanted to pick my brain on how to get things set up, I'm more than happy to help. Now, we do have a bit of a lengthy list, and I'm just going to go through one by one on how I think these properties should be set up. Now, by no means is this the end all be all on how to do it, but these are just some of the things that I have personally found successful on my own properties. The first place to start is to understand the rules of your city that you want to set one up in. For example, in Toronto, there are certain bylaws for short-term rentals. I have attached a link down below for those bylaws, not something we're going to cover in this specific video. On top of if the city allows it, if you are looking at a condo building or a certain community, you also want to see the bylaws on if those allow it. Now, in Toronto, most condos do not allow rentals shorter than 6 months. But there are some buildings that do allow it. For a list of those buildings, definitely let me know in the comments and I can send them to you. The other reason you want to make sure that your building allows it is that it's going to make it a lot easier on key exchanges. If you have to hide the fact that you are giving a key to a potential Airbnb client, that's not always the easiest thing to do. Meeting them around the corner in a park somewhere to give them the keys is not exactly a great first impression. Typically, the buildings that do allow it have things like condo cafe or key cafe, something that where people can just go in, grab the key right there, and it's allowed in the building. Now, when we hear Airbnb, for me, it's almost like the Kleenex version of a tissue paper. Airbnb is not the end all be all for short-term rentals. However, it has become a popular term. There are other websites you can add your property to. HomeAway, VRBO, Expedia is now in the game, and they own hotels.com, booking.com. Think about it from a perspective of you want to have your property on all these platforms. That way, if someone is looking on Expedia, looking to book a trip to Toronto, they can click your property to rent. You also want to make sure that the calendar syncs from every platform so that you know exactly where the rentals are coming from and you don't want any overlap in the rent. I also want to stress that this is a business and you have to run it as such. You're going to want to know the numbers on the ins and outs. Check websites like AirDNA to see what exactly things are renting for in the current market in the area, know what your competition looks like. When you do take on an Airbnb, sometimes it's really easy to see, oh wow, I paid $300 a night for this property. If you do that times 30 nights, that's $9,000. Wow, crazy return. Well, it's not all profit, and that's something that we really need to dive into here. Running an Airbnb or a short-term rental is a business. So you're gonna wanna factor in things like renovations, furniture, any wear and tear. You're going to need a cleaner. You're going to want to have repair staff, anybody who's going to help keep this place up and running. You're also going to want to factor in a vacancy rate because you're not going to have it rented every single day of the year, or at least typically you probably won't have it rented every single day of the year. Some markets, for example, in Toronto, our winters are not as lofty as the summer months. So if you are factoring in a certain amount of money per day for the entire year, you might not get that exact return going through the winter months. You're also going to want to factor in things like your mortgage payment, your maintenance fees if it's a condo, your property taxes, any municipal tax. For example, in Toronto, there is one, you have to claim it. So let's talk about furniture, and this is one thing that I can't stress enough. Do not make this property look like an IKEA showroom. Now, I'm not saying anything wrong with IKEA furniture. I have used them in my properties, but you should understand when to use it and when not. That lac table that you used in college that's built out of particle board probably won't stand up the test of time of multiple people putting their coffees or beverages onto that table over and over again. If you have to keep replacing it, all of a sudden, now maybe instead of $50 for the table, it might cost you $300 because you've had put in 6 of them. Maybe just better to go out and spend the $300 on that better table from the get-go. Well-decorated properties always stand out, and this is the things that people are going to be attracted to when booking your property. You're also going to want to think about linens, you're thinking about plates, you're going to think about dinnerware, all the stuff that people would need to just drop their bags and live. You're going to want to have a good amount of stuff and high quality stuff that people are going to actually like to use. Service and rating is everything, and these are what are going to bump your property ahead in the algorithm. And yes, these websites do use algorithms to bump certain properties ahead of the rest. Not something we're going to get too in detail here today, but think of it from a service side of business. If you're at a hotel and something goes wrong, you call the front desk and right away they try to find the solution. Your Airbnb will have to be run the same. If guests are there and they have an issue and they call somebody and no one's answering, all of a sudden it's going to ruin their experience and maybe lower the amount of stars they give you on the review. And those reviews are so huge. I can't stress it enough. You need good reviews to keep the train running. It's also a good time to recognize how much work you want to put into the property. If you're not available for calls every day or you just don't want to deal with it, then I recommend hiring a property manager. There are a few companies that do this really well, and they basically take everything off your hands. All you do is collect a paycheck every month, but they do everything from manage the calls, manage the bookings, set up the calendars, the cleaners, the repairs, all that stuff. They do it on their end and just pay you your portion every single month. Now, there is a cost to this, and typically what I've seen is anywhere between 20 and 50%. It really depends on the service that you're getting. I would recommend shopping around and see what kind of services are being offered and what kind of services you need for your property. The best ones, in my opinion, are typically totally hands-off, so you don't have to do a thing. All of a sudden, you just have paychecks coming in every month. Now, when people think about short-term rentals, they always think about the nightly rate. Well, not all these properties have to be nightly. Maybe you don't want to deal with a new tenant every single day, and you can set those parameters within whatever app you're using. So for example, if you wanted to get someone for 1 week or 2 weeks or a month or even 6 months, these platforms work great. I do find success in having a furnished property on these platforms, but keeping the minimum at 6 to 7 months. So I do find that this is a great option for that as well. Typically, when it's not a 12-month rental, you could charge a premium as long as the place is well appointed and set up for guests. On your team, you're going to want cleaners who are able to navigate the hectic schedule of tenants moving in and out. Maybe they will also do the key exchanges. You're going to want a plumber on deck and any kind of trades and services on deck so that if there is an issue, they can get in there promptly to fix anything. For example, if the washing machine breaks, someone can come in and get that repaired as soon as possible. If you do hire cleaners, there are bulk pricing where you can have them navigate with your calendar. Just make sure you shop around and know what the costs are. In Toronto, for example, it is typically between $200 and $300 per tenant move out. So if you're going to want that level of cleaning and all of a sudden you have 4 rentals in 1 week, that's a pretty significant amount of money on cleaners. Make sure that they are working with you for the price, and also make sure that you're charging the cleaning costs accordingly on the other side. When you're getting the place ready, I do recommend settings for 8. So think about dinnerware, any kind of plates, cutlery, all that kind of stuff. You're also going to want 2 sets of linens. And the reason for 2 sets is that if you have someone coming in, you can take the linens out, go wash them at home. So that way you don't have to wash them on site, because that might take time between tenants to get the laundry cycle done. If your cleaners are going to do it, they might appreciate having a second set of linens as well. So that way they can keep things rotating. You're going to want to reload things like coffee pods and dishwasher soap and all that kind of stuff between tenants as well. Now, I do recommend if you do shop at somewhere like Costco and you get the big 100 pod box, maybe don't give 100 pods right away because someone might just use them or take them or whatever. Maybe put 2 pods per person per day. I think that's a pretty good amount of coffee. So on the tech side of things, I recommend USB chargers, even throwing in chargers for iPhones, USB-C, USB-A, all those type of things for your clients. In case they forget them, they have something there. You're also going to want high-speed internet, and I would recommend taking an unlimited package and setting something up with like Netflix or Crave or Hulu, any of those platforms, so people can come in and watch TV. If it's a rainy day, they have something they can put on and just kind of chill out on the couch. Decorate this place and make it Instagrammable. You want this property all over social media. That way it gains attention and get pro photos done. Just like when you are looking for properties for yourself, if the photos are dingy and taken with an old phone, you might not select that property. No different than someone else looking to rent your property. Put those pro photos in so that way it stands out right away. Also on the tech side of things, I do recommend an August lock or an automated lock where you can unlock remotely if needed, or your guests can have access. You can give them temporary guest access for the property, especially if it's something that's a detached home, for example. You're going to want to ring doorbell so you can see who's coming into the property as well, and any kind of noise monitoring devices. Now, if you do have any kind of camera devices, you have to disclose it in the listing. Make sure that anyone coming to the property knows that there are such devices. And I do recommend just putting them at the front so you can see kind of who's coming in and out, and you can also monitor any noise if there's a party after a certain amount of time. As we get into the listing part of things, you're going to want to describe as much as you can about this property. Go into great detail on why you love this property, why you set it up for people the way you did, and what's awesome about it. Remember, people are booking an experience these days. It's not just about booking a hotel for cheaper than a hotel. They want an experience. That's why you want to have your place Instagrammable. I also recommend getting one of those Polaroid photos where people can take a picture in front of maybe a feature wall and put it in like a guest book. Maybe they keep a photo for themselves, put it in the guest book, they get it on social again. All different things that add to the experience. You are creating an experience, not just a hotel room. On top of the feature wall and the Polaroid, I recommend creating 2 separate guest books. One that's going to stay with the property, it can be called like a manual, and the other one where people can just grab and go. Think of like, the old school way of where someone would just grab a map and walk around the city. Think of your guidebook being their map for the city, except it's a little more personal. So if you have any favorite cafes, grocery stores, any restaurants that you recommend, put all that stuff in a format where someone can just take it, go to the printer and get a few books printed out so people can just grab and go. And that's something they can also take with them, because remember, next year, if they want to come back and they see your guidebook laying around in the drawer, they might be a little more apt to book your place again. For the manual, you're going to want to put in all the Wi-Fi passwords, any kind of emergency services, how to turn on the TV in step-by-step photos. Keep in mind, if someone's not super tech savvy and they want to get to Netflix, make it easy for them on that end. On the TV side, you can just throw in an Amazon Fire Stick, which makes any kind of TV smart TV. So one less thing to turn on. That one remote typically controls everything. When people do go to book your site and ask questions, you have to make sure to respond promptly. These websites are based on algorithms. People with 10 out of 10 reviews on communication definitely rank higher. Make sure you respond to every single inquiry. Make sure you answer every single question. If someone tries to book, you do typically have to respond within 24 hours on if you're going to accept them or not. And if you're not going to accept them, you have to have a good reason to. All these websites function by giving preference to people who accept the most reservations. Now, you can be selective, but just make sure that if you're turning down too many options, you might get bumped down in the search criteria. And if you do recommend things like cafes or restaurants, maybe reach out to those cafes and tell them that you're running a short-term rental and you want to send people to their properties. And the reason being is it's all about experience. If someone knows that they were recommended, now all of a sudden your place becomes the go-to for them in the city. You're always going to want a review to sound something like this. You have to stay here in Toronto. Not only were any of my questions asked, but any issues we had were responded to promptly. We were recommended to go check out Cafe X and the service was incredible. One of my favorite coffees of all time. I can't recommend staying at this place enough. I will definitely be back next summer. A review like that is the review that people are going to read and be more apt to book your property. It is a service-based business. I can't stress that enough. Make sure you're offering incredible service where people can keep coming back year after year to give you that repeat business. If I missed any recommendations, throw them down in the comments below. Let's make this a community where people can come to and get any kind of information. If you want to book in a call with me and discuss any options for doing a short-term rental here in Toronto or anywhere in Canada, we do have great referral networks. Book in a call with me in the calendar link down below. As always, if you found this information helpful, hit that like and subscribe button and follow me on all social media at Michael's Real Estate.